Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Right Now studios. I'm Neda Iranpour, filling in for Chris Groh today. We have a big gubernatorial race to get to. A debate happened last night. Jack, good morning to you.
Good morning, Neda. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, a lot of people maybe were watching this debate as they're trying to figure out who to vote for. As we know, there are so many candidates in this race. So these debates, I think, should open people's eyes on, what the candidates are standing for, what their thoughts and beliefs are. There's a big booklet that's been going out, as in your mail-in ballot, with the 61 different names on it. So a lot of people to try to figure out who you want, right? It's pretty challenging.
Yeah, I dropped my ballot off yesterday,
You did?
so
All
I was
right.
one. I actually got mine Monday, so
Okay.
we did it. I was one of the first people to get their mail-in ballots. I got it on the first day, so that's
Right.
always exciting. There's a lot of people who have made up their mind. There's a lot of people. I saw a bunch, a big group of people sending in their ballots yesterday. But one of the big things that we've been talking about here, Neda, is that there are a lot of people here who are still undecided. It is a crowded race. There is a wide spectrum of opinions on multiple of the top issues, whether that's the gas tax, whether that's healthcare, whether that's insurance, whether that's just how the state interacts with the ongoing Trump administration, lots of different things. And people seemingly either haven't had necessarily a enthusiasm for this race.
Right.
Maybe they might not know the candidates as well, but they've been really trying to make sure that that is the case and you're able to know it, because I've been telling Chris about this. We spoke to Jenny Huh about this. This is the third debate in 3 weeks. Can you
Yeah.
ever think of any sort of political campaign or political race that has had major debates in such a short amount of time? Multiple big debates with multiple candidates.
Right. And we're not seeing like the clear winner, right? We're not seeing there are some people who've kind of bopped up and down in these polls, but it's not like, oh, this one nailed it and they're in.
Yeah.
Because that's just the nature of this. There are 7 front runners. You're going to see 61 candidates. A couple of them are no longer even in the race, which I think will be confusing for people. You might recognize the name. We're talking Betty Yee, Eric Swalwell. They'll be on your ballot, but they're not in it.
Of course.
So just make sure you know that. But 7 front runners that there's been a lot of focus on. This is based on latest polling, and that's how they choose kind of who gets to go to these debates. 5 Democrats, 2 Republicans. This debate last night, CNN moderated it, put it together at Monterey Park in California, Northern California, LA area. The mail ballots already in voters' hands. So of course, what these candidates are saying really is crucial right now, because we are less than a month away. June 2nd will be the primary, and that's when your ballots are due, your voting is due. So I think, do we have the latest poll? Let's see what people are feeling these days.
So latest is maybe a strong word. This is the most latest CBS poll that we've seen, but one of the things that I wanted to mention as we were talking about this, Neda, is the fact that, and you mentioned it, these polls are not giving anyone any sort of rhyme or reason as to what the real state of the race is. It is giving us a clear picture of who the general front runners are.
We're seeing Hilton there again, right?
Yes.
He's been one of the leading, if not the leading most, or tied for top.
Since we
it
saw
seems like,
we saw Swalwell effectively step away from the race, it really has been Hilton, Steyer, and Becerra. But the level of support that we've seen them had has massively fluctuate. I want to point to you that 26%, that is the undecided.
Right.
I also want to mention, if you see that date there on that top right corner, this is from April 23rd to 27th. This was conducted by CBS prior to the CBS interview, but the CBS debate. But we see this fluctuation. Every single poll you get a different number. You've seen candidates like Becerra or Hilton or Steyer reach the 20s. We've seen Porter jump into that 3-headed Democratic monster in the mid-teens. We've seen a lot of fluctuation. So it really has been a guessing game as to which candidate is really going to take a stronghold on this deadlock and maybe even push themselves ahead. We've seen at moments where it seemed like Tom Steyer was the candidate who had that momentum recently, and we'll discuss this here in just a few moments. It seems like Becerra is, but again, we have Katie Porter hanging around,
right? She's
really,
still there.
Taking every opportunity to contrast herself with her 2 counterparts over there, with Becerra Becerra and Steyer. So,
and she's, the only female, we should point out, on the debate stage, of course. So Katie Porter telling the 6 male candidates to stop their bickering. That was one of the moments there. A notable exchange also with Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco over interrupting, because the debate rules yesterday, they were still able to interject. They weren't supposed to, but they were. Is that what was happening?
I wasn't entirely sure. So, of course, but you make a great point, which is, like the last debate, we had one less candidate in this debate than we did in the previous one. But the story,
Tony Thurmond was not there.
Tony Thurmond was not president there. That's correct. But it was the same issue where we had consistent interrupting, especially as we got out of the opening arguments, perhaps the more scripted answers, and it really started to become that free-flowing debate. That's when we kind of started to see the gloves come off. I think this was a more personal debate than we saw in previous ones too, because this might be the last time that we're able to see a debate like this, most likely until the primary officially kicks off with the primary election on June 2nd. This might be the last time people have to get that last soundbite out.
There are people that, like you said, are already turning their ballots in, so the quicker these candidates can make sure they're heard and known, the better for them. But we are in it. I mean, this is right now voting season, voting time. So remember, this is going to lead us to the June 2nd primary, which means the top 2 will then go on to November. So that could be, it looks like with these polls, a Republican, a Democrat, but still at this point, we don't know. It could end up being with Bianco and Hilton, as it was earlier projected.
It is real enough of a possibility to where you are seeing the state Democratic leadership continue to voice their concerns. So one of the things we talked about this week with Chris was Rusty Hicks, the chair of the California Democratic Party, telling The Guardian that he wants to see a reform to the jungle primary. It is such a concern that we are already hearing the Democratic Party leadership talk about changing the primary system as is. So whether or not we see the Republican versus Republican November general election. I know when we first started talking about this, I think there was some reporting that the simulated odds were probably around 10 to 20% chance, and that's fluctuated. And I think the polls are maybe starting to lean closer to that traditional Republican Democrat, but again, a real enough of a possibility
because
to
of
where
the
you see party leadership.
Yeah,
exactly.
26% could all decide to go in on one person.
It's
we
a crapshoot.
Know what's going to happen.
It could very well be a
so
crapshoot, and that's something that, of course, the party leadership wants to avoid. Rolling 7.
Yes.
So exactly, you know what I mean.
Right. So as we've been talking about, Becerra, I know in the latest poll from April at 13%, but it seems like he's still one of the top. So without saying what place he's in at this moment, hard to say. But he has been up in the polls ever since Eric Swalwell exited the race over the sexual assault allegations that we've been reporting on. So that makes him a target. I mean, a lot of the other candidates are going to try to knock him down, right? This is the nature of the game. Billionaire Tom Steyer, also top polling Democrat. And then the former LA mayor, Antonio Villaraigosa, and Sylvia Hilton, both raising the case of Becerra's former chief of staff, Sean McCluskey. So if you're not familiar with that, he pleaded guilty to charges related to theft of campaign funds. So this was their chance basically to try to knock Becerra down because of that former chief of staff and the charges on him.
And again, the gloves are coming off. So here, we'll play you this sound. We'll come right back in just a moment.
Your chief of staff was indicted for padding his salary with your campaign funds. You initially on CNN said that you knew that you signed it. You knew that they spent $10,000. And then on the second time on your show, you said you didn't know. The fact is, as I said, I think you have to answer. You had 2 committees. You spent $1,500 for one and $10,000 for the other.
Yeah, you mentioned him being a target, and I think you raise a good point. You mentioned that maybe the polls don't consistently indicate that Becerra is the top lead, is not necessarily not only the leading candidate in this race so far, but the leading Democrat in this race so far. I think perhaps the reason why he is such a target is a couple of different reasons. First off, his meteoric rise in the polls ever since we saw the exit of Eric Swalwell and what that rise entailed. And I think how perhaps a lot of people see it, I know that, my analyst mind kind of sees it, is that this is the candidate who essentially inherited the Democratic apparatus that Swalwell had for a long time before he had to exit the race. The endorsements of not just lawmakers, of unions. We'll talk about a union that he is being endorsed by in particular here in just a moment, but a lot of those went straight from Swalwell to Becerra. So it wasn't just the voting numbers that seemingly was a swap of a Swalwell for Becerra. It was the endorsements as well. Perhaps, of course, he has seen a large increase in that campaign funding as Swalwell left the race. So whether or not that is something that appears on the polls at this moment, it's something that apparently and seemingly so his opponents are aware of or trying to exploit right now.
Yeah. So when it comes to some of these topics, I mean, you have Katie Porter, a fellow Democrat, but she did press Becerra on his alleged about face in support for single payer health care. So she cited a KQED article reporting Becerra told the California Medical Association, that's a powerful doctors group, that he was not supportive of single payer health care, that he was not supportive. And Becerra said that reporting is false. So curious, how that will shape out in people's choices. Obviously healthcare, as we know, is such a big issue in our state, in voters' minds. Steyer, the other front-running Democrat, right now, latest polls show he's ahead of Becerra, but so he was also a target, taking on a lot of heat. Becerra and Steyer, going at it against each other, as you would imagine. Becerra criticizing Steyer's investments in fossil fuels that helped grow Steyer's wealth. I mean, he's a billionaire. Steyer calls for taxes on windfall profits from oil companies. So at this point, they're going to battle about fossil fuels. I can imagine that coming out a lot. Obviously, if he's making money that way, a lot of Democrats using that as their kind of fuel, for lack of a better term.
I love the pun there, right there. That was not a lack of a better term. I think you did a great job right there. But yes, I mean, essentially, Tom Steyer is in an interesting position. He is perhaps the most progressive candidate out of the bunch, but he is also the wealthiest out of the bunch. He is the one who has been able to entirely fund his campaign essentially by himself. He has far outspent any of his fellow Democratic opponents or Republican opponents.
If you're watching local news at all, which we hope you are, you see these ads, right? That there are a lot of Steyer ads. We hear them, it seems like nonstop.
And it's not just television. I'm scrolling on Instagram. I see Tom Steyer content all the time. Twitter, TikTok. It is a full forced campaign of it's a media blitz, and he's been able to see that. So it's poking holes in that argument that you're going to see on Steyer as well, because again, like we said, he is the other front running Democrat. He might not have the apparatus of the Democratic establishment or perhaps the support of the Democratic establishment, but it's not like he is coming in here empty-handed.
Right. He's got the money to put his voice out there. By the way, he has denied claims that he holds his wealth in tax havens, saying he pays all his federal and state taxes.
That was another thing. I believe it was Mahan or one of the other opponents who essentially, implied that he had money stored in, either a Swiss bank or the Cayman Islands. Essentially the point being he wants to raise your taxes, but he's going to try to avoid it. That's the argument that you have been seeing many of his opponents make.
And he does support that proposed one-time tax on billionaires that we've been talking a lot about. That's expected to be on the November ballot. So Steyer, a billionaire, is in support of that, while also saying that it did not go far enough and was not the only tax increase that he would pursue. So an interesting take.
Yeah. One of the bigger reactions that at least I found on it, because that's been something that we've been talking about as well. The union who was in charge and really spearheaded the effort to collect these signatures to try to get this measure on the November ballot. They say that they received enough signatures, so it's currently being audited by the Secretary of State. Once we get confirmation of that, like we saw with the voter ID initiative that officially made it onto this November ballot, we are expecting at this point this to get on the November ballot. So this was something that Democrats were asked about. You mentioned Steyer was really the only one that showed, a solid measure of support towards this. We know that Gavin Newsom has been critical of this. To maybe recap what it is, it's essentially a one-time 5% tax on people who make over $1 billion. And it's not just income, it is all assets. So it is the cars in your driveway, it's the paintings on your wall, it's your investment accounts, it's your crypto wallets, it's anything that can be taxed on it. So it is all assets. That is something that we've been hearing a lot about. We've been hearing a lot of very wealthy Californians say that they are going to leave the state. We've seen the owners, the founders of Google, or the heads of Google already say that they are going to do that. We've seen major companies like Palantir leave the state. So one of the things that Gavin Newsom says in his criticism of it is he does not want what is now the fourth largest economy. It was the fifth until just recently. And that's something that you hear a governor like Gavin Newsom boast. He does not want to see that go away because of that tax. So this is something that's controversial.
Yeah, and where the candidates stand on that, important, obviously, topic in all of this. And as we mentioned, Steyer does support it. He does say the money should actually be directed towards education. So he's against where the tax money would go. Katie Porter opposes the measure, calling it simply not good tax policy, argues that a one-time tax cannot address ongoing revenue needs for the state of California. Then we have Mahan arguing that his fellow Democrats have focused too much on expanding government rather than making it work better. So, I'm curious to see, what their stance is on taxes. I mean, obviously here in California, people know we live here. We pay a lot in taxes.
Yeah.
And is that money going to be put in places that voters want it to be put in? These candidates so far, it's not as clear. I mean, there are these promises that you hear, and then you wonder, how are you going to pay for that?
And it's Democrats of different stripes making similar arguments, especially among these candidates. Matt Mahan, he's consistently trying to portray himself as an anti-establishment, more moderate Democrat looking to reform the way in which Democrats run the state versus continuing the status quo. That's kind of been his calling card. But Katie Porter, she said that was not good tax policy. You need something more substantial, less than a one-time. She said she's agreed to the concept of a progressive tax policy. She just doesn't see this as a good idea. And like you said, even Tom Steyer is saying that there are issues with it. And he didn't even go as far as to say he'd explicitly be for it. He doesn't say he's for it, but he said he would vote for it in November. That's maybe a trick of the phrasing that some of the candidates, some of the moderators and his opponents kind of tried to poke holes in. And of course, some of the two Republicans are emphatically against it. Steve Hilton, one of the things that he has said is one of his proposals is having the first $100,000 that a person makes here in California tax free. So he has been more on the side of the other people, not just the billionaires and all that, and making sure that more people are paying less taxes, as you would see from your traditional Republicans.
Right.
So,
I mean, this is obviously a lot to take in. I'm curious. Also, I know people have thoughts on Katie Porter because of the viral videos, and we know her name is just known now. So I think we're going to take a break here, and then coming up next, we'll talk more about that. She does respond to the viral video. Yeah.
Yep, we'll have that. We'll have sound from the debate. But first, like Neda just said, and take a quick 2-minute break.
Welcome back here. So we are getting into the nitty gritty of this gubernatorial debate, the third one in 3 weeks, as you said, Jack, that you've been covering here in the Right Now show.
Blitz.
Yeah, right? I mean, hey, bring them on. If it helps voters decide who they want to pick, the more education we have, the better. Of course, the more knowledge you have. 61 candidates on that ballot, as we mentioned. There are 7 that were in the debate because of the way they've polled recently that are the leading candidates.
And really quick, maybe it's just good to go back and just reset and say who those people are. Again, it is Republican businessman Steve Hilton. It is billionaire Tom Steyer. It is former HHS Secretary and former California Attorney General Javier Becerra, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco, former California Congresswoman Katie Porter, Mayor of San Jose Matt Mahan, Comptroller Tony Thurmond, who is not at State Controller, my apologies, who is not at this debate, of course, but who was former LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Right. So it is like we said, jam-packed.
Yeah. And Thurmond not making the cut, basically, because of the way the numbers showed.
1% polling.
Yeah. So that's why. So that's why we had 7, where the last one, Thurmond was in the debate on stage there, the CBS debate. This one put together by CNN in Monterey Bay. And as we were talking about, leading into this break here, we were talking about Katie Porter, and Katie Porter's name just became more and more known because of the viral videos that a fellow colleague, Julie Watts, did an interview with her, and there was, tense moments, we could say, in that interview, and that just got a lot of people's attention.
And then, of course, there was a viral video of her yelling at a staffer. Those 2 videos in conjunction early on in the race, it was a moment where, people talk about not knowing who the candidates were. Now, it really was a mystery as to who is even going to be a front runner, who is even going to be someone who's going to get attention to replace Gavin Newsom. This was, I believe, this was September, October.
Yeah, it was a while
this was
ago.
in the fall of last year. And her name quickly was like one of the first one to really grab attention because of these moments.
Right. And in some cases, when people are looking at the ballot, I know that name. So sometimes going viral for whatever reason,
which helps when there's 61 candidates on the ballot. That's one of the things we've been talking. Sometimes not all bad news, all news is good news kind of thing.
It makes people stand out, maybe make people more curious about the candidate. She has been open to responding to questions about, her treatment of her staffer, the way she was talking with Julie Watts as well, and what happened there. But yeah, there was that moment with our CBS News Sacramento investigative reporter, Julie Watts. Julie Watts was there in last week's CBS debate. This video was also brought up during that, and it was brought up again last night.
She did a series with all of the candidates. Right. So all of the candidates that you saw on stage yesterday had that opportunity to talk to Julie Watts, of course, Katie Porter included. Okay, so like we mentioned, that was something that was mentioned in the debate. Yeah. In this debate, she took the opportunity to contrast that outburst with last week's interaction, perhaps a roundabout way of saying, this is who I am. I needed the opportunity to prove to myself that I'm more than just the outburst. So here's her comments. This is her talking to CNN's Caitlin Collins.
The ad is about showing Californians what they've had a chance to see on this stage tonight and in every other debate stage that we've had, which is that I'm able to take responsibility, I'm able to follow the rules, I'm able to say I'm sorry, and I'm able to do better. Everybody in California had a chance to see me on stage with that reporter in the last debate and see exactly how I conducted myself. Californians can decide for themselves about my temperament based on what they've seen here tonight. And if these boys bullying and bickering hasn't been enough to raise questions about their temperament, I would really challenge that.
Of course, you mentioned she kind of tried to rein in her 6 opponents during multiple times during this debate. Yeah. Of course, as we got about, if you were paying attention to this debate, about 15, 20 minutes into it, that's when you really started to hear people talk over each other. And she was trying to kind of, rein it in. She was herding cats for a little bit, trying to make sure that people got.
That moment right there, you heard her. She said these boys bullying, that bickering, and she's calling them out, and that's her view, and that's what she's dealing with on that debate stage. So it's an interesting take on obviously the ads that she was referring to. Present her in that way where she's apologizing. She said she made a mistake and she's owning up to it. And that is, I think, her argument into why people should vote for her, that she can change.
And it's kind of in line with the way that she's described herself too. She says, she says, I'm a minivan driving mom. I got kids. I'm the one going to the grocery store. I'm the one seeing these prices. So that's something that she's clearly trying to make apparent here. There was another instance that I wanted to talk about here, of course, of the two Republican candidates. Chad Bianco is the one that has been garnering the most headlines in recent weeks and recent months, most specifically because of his move to seize 650,000 ballots from Riverside County. That was from the 2025 election, last year's election, in which we saw Prop 50 get passed. A recap for those who perhaps need one or who aren't aware at the moment. He decided to take this action after there was a small group of Riverside County voters who had alleged that there was a mass difference, a gap in between the counted votes and the actual tally. That is something that the Registrar of Voters in Riverside County has flatly denied. They say that the number was much smaller than what was being alleged. However, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco was able to receive that warrant from a judge. He was able to get these. This is now something that is being litigated in California. Of course, Rob Bonta has filed 2 lawsuits against Bianco. We're waiting to hear from the California Supreme Court to get a ruling as to essentially what the powers of a county sheriff are in this matter, or is this the responsibility of the Attorney General or any other law enforcement official here? So that's something that's being litigated right now in the state Supreme Court. But that's between Bianco and the current Attorney General.
Right.
Rob now
Bonta.
We're hearing is that there's another lawsuit going on, and it just happens to be one of his gubernatorial opponents.
Yeah, I mean, to have 2 candidates on the stage right there where one is suing the other.
Actively engaged in a lawsuit.
Pretty remarkable. Yeah, so Javier Becerra has filed a lawsuit against Bianco saying that the seizure of those ballots violates laws on who can handle and count votes. So Becerra and the ACLU Voting Rights Project filing that separate lawsuit in California Supreme Court on behalf of 4 Riverside County voters. So those voters and Becerra and the ACLU Voting Rights Project all against what Bianco did with the ballots. And that's really fascinating to see those two on the debate stage. Obviously, their thoughts about each other can get heated as they discuss all of this. So we do have sound bites from both Becerra and Bianco that you can listen to here.
Sheriff is supposed to enforce the law. In this case, Sheriff Bianco violated the law. There are ways that you treat ballots. You have to maintain the integrity of every ballot. So I know, we all know that no one will tamper with your ballot. There is a chain of custody requirement that the law says you have to follow in order to let that ballot move anywhere. Sheriff Bianco,
I believe he broke the law.
Sheriff Bianco didn't follow that process. He violated the law.
We're not talking
as
about
the
elections.
sheriff.
I am elected and tasked with enforcing the law in Riverside County. And part of that is fraud. Election fraud is against the law. There is absolutely nothing we did that was illegal. And the real issue here is the Attorney General just doesn't want them counted. So the issue at stake in the Supreme Court is whether he has the authority to order me to not do an investigation. That's all this is.
We know that Riverside County Sheriff Bianco has sort of branded himself as more of the firebrand of these debates so far. And this is not the first time that he's been asked about this in one of these debates. He has consistently, emphatically has rejected the ideas. Denying, I don't think, is the correct word here. He is rejecting the criticism that he's seeing, especially from Rob Bonta. He has been on the attack of the current Attorney General since he held a press conference outlining this seizure. He has been on the attack about it. And then, of course, this is not the only thing that we heard him emphatically denying and rejecting as well. There was a moment where his past affiliation with the Oath Keepers was something that was being mentioned. Now, it is an organization that critics often call a right-wing extremist group, a militant group. Bianco's opponents noted that the group was present during the January 6th Capitol riots, which led to an emphatic rejection, like I just said, from Bianco. He made, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is what he said to some of those his Democratic opponents. He said, "There are politicians who have molested children. You're a politician. are you doing that? So a flat rejection. However, though, there was an instance where there was a little bit of confusion about what he was trying to convey, because he was asked about his affiliation with the Oath Keepers, and he says, "I keep my oath." And people that at first it seemed like he was affirming that there was an affiliation, but he says that he was referring to his oath as Riverside County Sheriff.
Okay.
And
Not
he
an
later
oath
said,
keeper.
yeah. So,
Right.
and that was the interaction that was had. And then he later confirmed that he is no longer affiliated with the group. So Bianco, of course, has been under the microscope for some of these actions. He did not get the endorsement of President Trump, but he is nonetheless branded himself as one of the fiercest supporters of President Trump. That dates back to before this gubernatorial campaign, 2024, when President Trump got convicted of those 34 felony counts. He said it's time to put a felon in the White House. He has been steadfast in his support for President Trump. President Trump has seized ballots in Fulton County, Georgia. Shortly after, we saw these being seized in Riverside County. I don't want to make any direct associations that they're related to each other, but it rhymes at least.
And we should point out, President Trump has endorsed Steve Hilton, not Bianco. And because of that, that also makes Hilton a target of Democrats in that way. Becerra, for example, calling Steve Hilton, saying that Trump is Steve Hilton's daddy. He keeps saying that, referencing that he's his daddy, which Hilton brushed off and said, yes, he would work with the Trump administration.
Second time.
Yeah, he keeps calling him that. So, but Hilton is saying he's going to work with the Trump administration, which California Democratic leaders have not necessarily been able to do, coming eye to eye with the Trump administration. So this is, Hilton's chance to basically say he'll be able to work with the federal government and trying to point out the benefits of being able to do that. So that part's very interesting that obviously Trump chose Hilton and not Bianco. How does that kind of pushed Bianco down in the polls after that happened? It shot Hilton up to the top. It almost happened overnight, it seemed, after that endorsement.
Still wasn't enough to get Hilton the Republican California Party endorsement, though. So that's always an interesting factor. You mentioned the Becerra, Steve Hilton. Let's get some few quick hitters out of the way before we take a break here and we move on to another topic. A lot of the candidates were asked in one word how to assess Gavin Newsom's term. Most of the Democrats were positive. Both of the Republicans. Chad Bianco even said that his word was stolen by Steve Hilton. It was failure. I don't think that comes as a surprise for anyone. We saw Antonio Villaraigosa call it as performative and Matt Mahan call it incomplete. So a little bit of a separation there. And then Tom Steyer had a moment where he was calling for the prosecution of some ICE agents, Trump administration leadership. Most notably, the one that was really being weighed during the questioning was Kristi Noem, former DHS secretary. Whether it's being accountable, he said he wants to hold him accountable right up to Stephen Miller. That among other stuff. But of course, before we take a break here, this was something that we covered yesterday. So if you want to check some of our at the moment reactions, some of our at the moment coverage, you could do so on the CBS YouTube. We have CBS political reporter Jenny Day. She comes in, or Jenny Huh, my apologies.
Yeah.
We got two Jennys here. So I want to make sure I get it right.
But Jenny
Huh,
Huh,
she comes in on Fridays.
Right.
We will be talking to her about that. We will be getting her reactions on Friday. So if you want more of this content, we're going to have that coming here later in the week.